Yo, this pressure that comes with the block, you could end up inside of a box when you get your eyeballs by out after getting set up by a cop. Opportunity, it doesn't knock. No, that time right there be the cops. And all of that stress that we talking still beats punching the clock. You think I want to sweep your floor from 8 to 4? Fuck, I want to take your orders for. When your favorite star got an Audemars that's worth more than mama's car. Type of shit make you want to say fuck the law. When your rent's due, when your bitch poor, nigga, we don't even own our own corner store. So quarter waters cost a quarter more. We want to be an entrepreneur. We want sign checks. We want work for ourselves. We want on the next. You're too much of a threat when you're on your own assets. So the only thing they show us had to be an outlet, so we won't connect. They say hi like hola, listen to Hova, whip up a rover. Been watching Power, now me and Ghost, bro. So I need some powder, fish scale and soda. 99 cents. It's hard to repent when you gotta pay rent. Baking soda's only 99 cents. Make it make sense, make it make sense. Soda's only 99 cents. Hard to repent when you gotta pay rent. Baking soda's only 99 cents. Make it make sense, make it make sense. Yeah, the money is the motive. Repeat my history, crack cocaine is like the motif. It's way to simple with that than my mother hustle. It's been my gut, so I feel like it's time to grind, just like the times when niggas lie. Hold up, back then was the bad days. Motherfuckers push mad weight. I was a creep baby. Tell me nothing about my mother and the struggle. So I'm living in this fucking shop, smoking, she hustle. Selling everything in the house, goddamn. She ain't give a damn about us, goddamn. So my older brother had a man, I've had to take care of us. In the peace with 4 kids. The one on the way when I was living. No food in the fridge, on some cold shit. Got food stamps from the neighbors. Time work ain't had no favors. Late night, you would shop bodegas. Over bread is to me some mayo. Kool-Aid had about 4 flavors. And when time went to cash out, I could lash out. Told me to take food stamps. $15 for that kid. Fuck all that shit. Then the young nigga noticed that it could be the coldest. Take back what they owed us. Whole world on the shoulders. No food in the kitchen but the stove work. $10 in the sack and he points to the back. Say, I give me keep that soul. 99 cents. It's hard to repent when you gotta pay rent. Baking soda's only 99 cents. Make it make sense, make it make sense. Hey, Shalom, Yahweh Hashem Yahshai Barak Atham to all the brothers. Yahweh Shamar Alatham Hashem Yahshai to all the sisters. I'm Officer 500 of Baja of the I.S.U.P.K. under Commanding General YAHANNA. That's the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge under Commanding General YAHANNA. Started out 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York, 1969. And we are here to teach you the truth about the Bible, the truth about who Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans are, right? We got a signing link. If you are interested in joining the school, learning about your knowledge, and getting a Hebrew name, right? We got a sign-in link. Hit that sign-in link. You get credit, I.S.U.P.K benefits, including a Hebrew name, right? One of the most important benefits that you get is brotherhood and sisterhood, right? You get the knowledge of yourself, how to govern yourself, what a moral compass, and brotherhood and sisterhood. All right, Salakia. Where'd that go? Let's get rid of that for a second. Right. Today we're gonna be talking about the war on drugs, right? Which is really just a war on Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, right? Our oppressor has tried to destroy us at every chance, right? Psalms 83, I believe is verse 18, talks about Salakia. Psalms 83 talks about how the nations are going to gather together to try and destroy us, right? And they've tried everything to destroy us. And Esau, he's the chief of these nations, right? Edomites, who are our oppressors, the European man. They are the chief of these nations, and they don't hesitate to destroy us, right? If whatever our oppressors want, if it benefits them, they're going to do it. If it benefits them and destroys us at the same time, they're going to do it with enthusiasm, right? So let me just get my article ready, right? So we got an article, The War on Drugs, which is really a war on blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Let me just get that article right quick, right? Every ghetto, reserve, barrio you've ever been to, anywhere blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans live, it's totally destroyed. Right? I gotta send this to myself right quick. One moment. It's totally destroyed. It's destroyed with the oppressor's drugs, right? His sorcery. It's totally destroyed us. You can't go into a black, Hispanic, or Native community without seeing heroin, um, fentanyl, fentanyl, killing many blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Right? We're killing ourselves with their drugs. We're selling their drugs and going to prison. Right? That's what's happening in the so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native American communities. Slovakia, one moment. Many families are destroyed because of the oppressor's cocaine, because of the oppressor's heroin, right? I remember we went to camp in Montreal, right? We were in camp in Montreal, and Officer Officer Shariwan Salakia, Officer Adiyar, right? Officer 1000 Adiyar, he was speaking at camp, and a Ishmaelite came up and said that we're just talking. He said that Officer Shariwan was just speaking nonsense, right? Because the topic, Officer Salaki, I said Officer Shariwan again. The topic that Officer Adiyar was speaking about was drugs. He said Officer Adiyar was speaking nonsense, right? Because Officer Adiyar was speaking about drugs. And then this Ishmaelite turned around and said, "We sell blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, right? Drugs because they want to use it." Right? He was letting us know these nations are happy to destroy us, right? And in destroying us, all that's ever happened is like we go to jail. The drugs have taken the destroyed the sisters, like destroyed the whole household. Black fathers are in jail for like years. There's many fathers who've gotten life sentences off a plant that's crushed up, mixed with gas and cement, right? Gotten life sentences, and now he can't raise his boy to tell him, "I made a mistake," right? You should never get into this, right? The boy doesn't. His boy child doesn't see that. His son doesn't see that. So what happens? The son runs right into the same path his father did, because there's no father in the house to guide him, right? We have whole Salakia, our we have a genre of music called rap, right? Or the umbrella term, we'll just say hip hop, but rap music, right? In the 80s, it was talking about peace and love and fight the power, and blacks, Hispanics gotta come together, right? Our oppressor, he decided that he doesn't want that, right? Now we have to have gangster music. We have to have music about selling drugs. You can't even put a song on YouTube right now, right? That's gonna get millions of views if it's not talking about murdering blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans and selling them dope, right? So let's get to this article. Give me one moment. Hit you with that share screen.
Right, so we have it right here. A 50-year war on drugs imprisoned millions of Black Americans. Right now, you can say this goes across the board. Right, this goes across the board because whatever our oppressor sets in motion, the other countries under the rule of Esau, they do the same thing. So if there's Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans in Europe, in London, in the UK, they're going through the same treatment. In Canada, they go through the same treatment. Right? If you could, Salakia, I wonder what it looks like. Officer Shariwan. No, you know what, Salaki, I got it. I'm gonna do it right now. I just wanted to check and see what the article looks like in the video feed. If it's clear, if our people watching can see it properly. So I'm gonna check it out 1 second. Yeah, that's pretty clear. Just give it a little more. Salakia. Alright. This one needs to go to that. All right, so let's get into this article, right? This prison photo is from 2014, February 20th, right? This is a familiar photo, right? Now, I'm not sure if this photo. Let's see if this photo is real. Sacramento County await processing after arriving at Duval Vocational Institution. Okay, so this is an A&D, which is arrival and departure, right? That's a picture of a real jail with real brothers, right? Landscaping was hardly his lifelong dream. As a teenager, Alton Lucas believed basketball or music would pluck him out of North Carolina and take him around the world in the late 80s. He was the right-hand man to his musical best friend, Euthra Anthony Fowler, who many hip-hop and R&B heads knew as DJ Nabs. But rather than the jet setting with Fowler, Lucas discovered drugs and the drug trade at the height of the so-called war on drugs, right? That's out. Many brothers discovered drugs, right? They were coming from food stamps and very since we got out of slavery, our oppressor has tried everything to destroy us, right? Especially the tribe of Judah. The tribe of Judah has gone. They had Rosewood. They had Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? And those places were burnt to the ground, right? Those places were airborne, right? I think I seen a video. I'm quite sure it was a video of a bombing in the States. Or houses being set on fire. I think it was in Philadelphia, somewhere around in the 80s, right? Every time Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans try to build something, it's destroyed. You can even look at what they've done to Africville in Nova Scotia, where they just let it. The city didn't want to. While the city is up until the 2000s is spending money everywhere else in Nova Scotia to develop it, they're leaving Africville to be a garbage dump, right? If you think about Seneca Village in New York, in Manhattan, what they now call Central Park, right? That place was moved. Blacks, Hispanics had a village, right, where they lived in the what is now known as Central Park. It was moved so our oppressors could walk their crappy dogs, those little dogs that they fit in their purses, right? So they could walk those dogs, so they could go jogging around and look at the scenery, not caring about how many people were killed, not caring about how the Native Americans were ravished to make Central Park. He was the right hand to, we read that. It was a time when drug abuse in communities of color was not seen as a public health issue that opioids are today, right? That is a statement in itself, right? Because our oppressors set a trap, and that trap is backfiring. Now you see, you see Ken and Becky ODing in the street, right? You see them sleeping on the street. You see the heroin and the fentanyl heavy in the suburban communities, right? While crack cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl is still in the ghetto, but you see it making its way to the suburban communities and into the homes of oppressors, and they're crying foul. They're saying it's a problem. It's a epidemic, right? But when Leroy and Keisha and Hector were smoking crack and ODing in the ghetto and on the reservations, right? They said nothing. They did nothing. All they did was lock up the people with a problem, right? A drug is a very strong demon, right? A lot of brothers can't fight that demon by themselves, right? No brother, actually, no sister can fight that demon by themselves. They need the Lord. They need ISUPK to help them get off drugs. That's why we have drug programs, right? Nevertheless, if they, most brothers and sisters, if they don't know about the ISUPK, they will be finding out. But if they're not contacting the men of the Lord to help them get off drugs, they never get off drugs, right? What happens is our brothers and sisters are dying and no one says anything about it, right? As soon as little Billy dies over too much fentanyl, finding out King B is not contacting the men of the Lord is an issue.
Salakia, sir, are you there? Salakia, y'all, we're just having some technical difficulties. Priest and Officer 500 Zabadia will be right back. All right, so Salakia, we're back. We're just gonna start from the top of the article again. Just gonna read over it until Priest and Officer 500 Zabadia gets back. All right, so this article again is titled 50-Year War on Drugs Imprison Millions of Black Americans. All right, so to some people living in the States, some people living in Canada, you may have heard about this before. There was a big war on drugs just a couple centuries ago or a couple decades ago. I don't want to misquote what presidency that was under. It might have been Ronald Reagan, but I don't quote me on that. But so this article is just shedding more light on some of the things that took place. All right, this article was published on Wednesday, July 21st, 2021, by a gentleman named Aaron Morrison. All right, so this photo right here says in this February 20th of 2014 file photo, prisoners from Sacramento County await processing after arriving at the dual vocational institution in Tracy, California in 1971. President Richard Nixon declared a war on drugs. It is questionable whether anyone won the war. Who suffered the worst losses is clearer: Black Americans, their families, and their communities. All right, so if anybody doesn't know this, the drugs that were put in our communities absolutely devastated our families, devastated our communities. A lot of brothers, got into drug dealing, gang banging, because of the influx of drugs that was brought in the communities. It's documented that a lot of these brothers working with police, working for the police, selling drugs for the police, working with the military, just a lot of different stories surfacing that have been starting to come out more and more as time goes on. But regardless to say, drugs have absolutely destroyed our people. All right. Drugs for a long time, it's affected so many of our families. I can name countless of aunts, uncles that were divorced because of drugs. You had the big crack epidemic in the 80s. You understand? A lot of crack babies being born. Single mothers just selling everything they have so that they could get the next high. You understand? Just a lot of chaos, a lot of destruction in our communities. Right? General Mahaiman, he did a class a couple of weeks ago on the effects of weed. Right? And a lot of people would look at weed as one of the lighter drugs or entry drugs or one of the smaller things in our community. But when you look at all the effects that weed has on us, that it has on the people, it's absolutely destroying us mentally, physically, just families broken up and destroyed. And I say all that to say, as all this is going on, and as the president is quote unquote has this war on drugs, they're the ones bringing drugs in our communities, right? And that's just to show some of the characteristics of this oppressive devil that's over us. Like, they have no value for our lives. They have no conscience, no compassion. And again, not only were the drugs destroying our communities, but all the families destroyed from brothers being locked up, sisters being locked up, kids being put in foster care systems. You understand? Like I said, just the amount of devastation, the amount of destruction and chaos that these drugs they put in our communities had on our community, it was absolutely devastating. It was absolutely disgusting. You understand? And again, this article is just going to shed some light, give some stories on some of the things that some of the things still taking place today. All right, it goes on to read, landscaping was hardly his lifelong dream. As a teenager, Alton Lucas believed basketball or music would pluck him out of North Carolina and take him around the world. All right, Salakia, I'm going to pass the class back over to Precinct Officer of 500 Zabadia.
Baba Kasha, because you have the article already up, can you keep reading it, please?
Sir.
We're gonna
As a teenager, Alton Lucas believed basketball or music would pluck him out of North Carolina and take him around the world. In the late 1980s, he was the right-hand man to his musical best friend, Yutha Anthony Fowler, who many hip-hop and R&B heads know as DJ Nabs. But rather than jet-setting with Fowler, Lucas discovered drugs and the drug trade at the height of the so-called drug war of Slovakia. Fowler and Lucas discovered drugs and the drug trade at the height of the so-called war on drugs. It was a time when drug abuse in communities of color was not seen as the public health issue that opioids are today.
Right. And that's what we were talking about before we had a little difficulties, right? That now that these drugs are in the suburban communities, it's a problem. But when it affects Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, it's don't worry, they're good, right? You can keep reading, Ak.
Facing decades-long imprisonment, Lucas received a rare bit of mercy.
Read that part one more time.
Facing decades-long imprisonment.
Hold that right there, Ak Baba Kasha. Right. Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, we go through it. When it's time to be sentenced, we're giving the whole sentence, right? When it's time for it, just like we're going to see the outcome of what happens for the sentencing of our brother who was killed, Christian Youngman, right? But majority of the times, just look at the George Floyd sentencing, right? For the murder of George Floyd. That his sentence should have been life, no parole, right? But the cop who killed our brother, his sentence wasn't life, no parole. When we get caught with drugs, we get the full book plus the index plus the receipt, right? We get the book, the index, the receipt, the table the book sits on, and the guard that's going to read that book, right? When our oppressors get sentenced, they get a slap on the wrist. They get a pat on the back. Oh, don't worry, Johnny, you'll be all right, right? He gets to get away with drug dealings, right? Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, we get life sentences for the littlest amount of drugs. Now, there is no little amount of drugs when you think about what the effects is to our community. But compared to what our oppressor will get sentenced for, we get sentenced 10 times higher. Right? You can keep reading.
Lucas received a rare bit of mercy. He got treatment, early release, and what many would consider a fresh start. Later, Lucas started a landscaping company. He said, because nobody would hire me because I have a felony. Lucas was caught up in a system that imposes lifetime limits on most people who have served time for drug crimes, with little thought given to their ability to rehabilitate.
Right. So you can hold that right there. Our oppressor doesn't care about giving us rehabilitation when it comes to drugs. When it comes to any type of crime that they said we did, right? They don't care about their whole system. Prison system is not about rehabilitation. Their prison system is modern day slavery, especially for blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. In the Americas, right, Babylon, when slavery was over, they said that if a black man is caught committing a crime, he could go back into hard labor. Right? You flash forward and look at the American prison system and the Canadian prison system. You have brothers and sisters working in these they're working in these facilities, not getting paid nothing, right? In America, they have brothers fighting forest fires and they're getting paid as little as 10 cents per day, right? In Canada, if you work in the provincial system, right, the provincial jail system for sentencing, you get paid a pop and a chocolate bar weekly, and you do about 8 hours worth of work, right? 8 hours worth of work in Canada in the provincial prison system, and you get a pop and a chocolate bar. In the federal system, it's about cents on the dollar, right? You get money towards your canteen in the federal system, but it's not money. It's not a wage, right? You can keep reading, Ak.
In addition to being denied employment, those with criminal records can be limited in their access to business and educational loans, housing, child custody rights, voting rights, and gun rights.
Right. So for the tribe of Judah, once you have a criminal charge, there is nothing there for you. You damn near have to go through 100 loops, right? Do 100 tricks just to get meaningful employment, right? It's almost the same for Canada. Canada, you could still get certain types of employments, right? But it's not enough to survive on, right? The average rent in Toronto right now for a 1 bedroom is around 16 to 1700, depending on where you're living, right? Now, if you're only able to get a job that pays you up to $17, $14 to $17 an hour, you're barely living. If you make $17 an hour on a 40-hour week, you make about 1,200 every 2 weeks. Rent is 1,700. You're only making about now 1,200 before taxes, right? You have to remember that part. 1,200 before taxes. So after taxes, you're clearing maybe 1,100, maybe $1,000. That's $2,000. For the rest of your month, you have $300 to survive on. Now you have to buy food, clothing, and transportation. You're not making any money with a criminal record. They don't help you to rehabilitate. They don't teach you, like, you can't go into jail and learn a trade, right? If you really wanted to stop drug dealing, you should be teaching every brother in jail a trade, right? At least giving him the steps for that trade so he can come out and get on his feet, right? But you're not able to do any of that, right? They just want you to go work in the kitchen, they have a thing called trail core, right? Where in provincial jail, brothers and sisters are forced to make orange t-shirts, white t-shirts, and socks, or they print license plates. And again, in the provincial system, you're only getting a chocolate bar and a Sprite. They might be generous sometimes and give you an extra bag of chips. But you worked 38 hours that week and you got a chocolate bar and a Sprite. Right? That is not going to help you not sell drugs when you come back out. You can continue reading.
Come. In addition, 50 years ago this summer, President Richard Nixon declared a war on drugs.
Right.
Today, with the U.S. mired in a deadly opioid epidemic that did not abate during the coronavirus's pandemic's worst days, it is questionable whether anyone won the war.
Right. So Richard Nixon's war on drugs is really a war on blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Millions of blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans have been in the prison system since the American government overlooked the drugs coming into the country. Since Richard Nixon's war on drugs. What else do we got? You can read from Yet the Losers, Baba Kashai.
Come. Yet the losers are clear. Black and Latino Americans, their families, and their communities. A key weapon was the imposition of mandatory minimums in prison sentencing.
Right. Mandatory minimum prison sentences, meaning that was basically saying, like, if the judge could hear your story, and let's say there was a judge devil who felt compassion for your situation and said, listen, you don't deserve to be doing all that time. You might be able to, you made a mistake, I understand. You might be able to rehabilitate your life, right? You might actually learn a lesson in going to jail for a little bit, right? That judge still doesn't have the authority to sentence you to less than the mandatory minimum. So if the mandatory minimum is you do 3 years in jail, you do 3 years in jail. Even if the judge wanted to sentence you to 8 months in jail, right? 8 months in jail, the judge has to give you that 3 years, right? Salakia. What our oppressors do is they're able to pay for a good lawyer. They're able to make bail, right? Hey, Shalom, Yahweh Hashem Yahshua Baruch Atah.
Shalom, Yahweh Hashem Shabbat Katham.
What's going on, warrior? You Tuwap?
All too well, Adawan.
Come, Most High in Christ. The water for joining us, right? We're going in on the war on drugs, right? That started over 50 years ago. Is really a war on blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. It's really another tactic our oppressor has used to destroy us, right? So what our oppressors would do is they get a good lawyer. Their family's able to pay for a lawyer. Their lawyer is able to talk down the charges. So they're not even getting the same charge that they started out with. They're going to plead to a lesser charge, right? We've seen this with the Christian, a young man, right? Those oppressors, right? They were able to work out a plea deal for a lesser charge. Started with murder, now it's manslaughter. Right? That's what happened. You could keep reading.
Come. Decades later, those harsh federal and state penalties led to an increase in the prison industrial complex that saw millions of people, primarily of color, locked up and shut out of the American dream.
Read that part one more time.
Decades later, those harsh federal and state penalties led to an
Hold that right there. They set harsh federal and state penalties to punish, to destroy, to totally demolish the black home, right? You know that father was only selling drugs because you destroyed his community and there's no jobs for him. You know that he needs his children. His children need him. You gave him 20 years. You gave his oppressor, a young oppressor, a young European who had the same amount of drugs as him. You gave him 2 years. You gave him probation. Right? Those harsh penalties made sure that the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans weren't able to elevate, weren't able to pull themselves out of a bad situation. You can keep reading.
Led to an increase in the prison industrial complex that saw millions of people, primarily of color, locked up and shut out of the American dream.
Right. You can give me some more.
Come. An Associated Press review of federal and state incarceration data shows that between 1975 and 2019, the U.S. prison population jumped from 240,593 to 1.43 million Americans.
Good night. Like, that is, now I'm not good with percentages, but that looks like almost 80%. Right? I'm willing to, like, that looks like almost 80%. 240,000, right? To 1 million, 1.43 million, right? So that's 1,430,000, right? People in jail since what is that saying? It jumped from
So from 1975.
Wow.
This is between 1975 and 2019.
So there are more Black, Hispanic, and Native American men in jail than there was Black, Hispanic, and Native American men in captivity during slavery. Right? There are millions throughout the decades. Millions of brothers have gone through this harsh reality of our oppressor just being a monster, just being a beast, right? What else do you got?
It reads, among them, about 1 in 5 people were incarcerated with a drug offense listed as their most serious crime.
Right. So this is what you have to understand. A pedophile will commit will abuse a child. A pedophile will abuse a child, and they will get a sentence where they come out and get rehab. Their sentence is not that. A lot of times you see them getting away with light sentences, right? But a brother commits a drug offense, right, which is technically non-violent, right? A drug offense which is non-violent, and they're given years, they're given decades, right? They're set to die in jail for a drug offense, a non-violent crime, while a pedophile gets a drug rehab program. They get a rehab program. They get to see the road again, right? Like Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans in jail, they'd say they get to touch road, right? A pedophile gets to touch road while a Black, Hispanic, or Native American man, a Black man, dies in jail. Right, that is terrible. 1 in 5, right, were incarcerated. So that means we know someone. Every brother knows someone who was incarcerated. Right, that's such a terrible thing to happen to Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Really, it's really supposed to be every brother knows a brother who's a lawyer. Every brother knows a priest, an officer in the I.S.U.P.K, right? Every brother's supposed to know a skilled trade to feed their family. instead of knowing what the inside of arrival and departure looked like in the Toronto Guantanamo South.
All right.
Right? What else do we got? Bring me to that last paragraph. No,
So,
the one you had under the 1 and 5.
Cancer.
I got some more numbers. Those numbers are the numbers that people need to hear.
Cancer. The racial disparities reveal the war's uneven toll. Following the passage of stiffer penalties for crack cocaine and other drugs, the black incarceration rate in America exploded from about 600 per 100,000 people in 1970 to 1808 in 2000.
Read that one more time.
The black incarceration rate in America exploded from about 600 per 100,000 people in
So
1970.
basically what that's saying is for every 100,000 people that were black, right? And when we say black, we mean Hispanics and Native Americans too, because whatever happens to us is happening to our brothers as well. You can't ever forget that whatever is happening to us is happening to our brothers, right? So every 600 black person, for every 100,000, 600 black people go to jail, right? And that was people in 1970 to, what's it say, 1808 in 2000. So
it went from, so for every 100,000 people in 1970, 600 of those were black.
Right.
600 of those people were black. In the year 2000, that number jumped up to 1,808.
1,800 people in 2000, right? In 2000, out of every 100,000, 1,800 people are blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Now tell us the oppressor is not the devil the Bible speaks of. Tell blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans they are not in slavery, right? Now, this is a war on drugs. And again, we're talking about a war on blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, right? What's that last? Salakia, jump to the paragraph below the Gonzalez.
Come. We realized then that along with dismantling drug trafficking organizations, there was also a real need to clean up communities, to go to where the crime was and help people that are helpless, Gonzalez, age 64, said.
Right. So Gonzalez was a drug enforcement agent, right? He's now realizing what's happening to his community, and he's trying to somewhat change it, right? You could keep going. I'm just trying to see the last of this article to see if there's anything else. I just really wanted the numbers, right? So we could see that in like Salakia, where is it? Jump down to where it says Nixon declared war on drugs on June 17th, 1971.
Come. Nixon declared the war on drugs on June 17th, 1971. By the time the former president sought re-election amid the anti-Vietnam War and Black Power movements, criminalizing heroin was a way to target activists and hippies.
Right. Now, ask yourself, how did all this heroin get from the Middle East into the ghetto? The ghetto has no airstrip,
God.
right? I've lived in the ghetto in Canada. There is no airstrip in Lawrence Heights, right? There's an airstrip at Downsview though, right? Salakia, you see that the border is very loose, right? The Canadian border, Niagara Falls, is very loose. Many things come through that border. Many things come off these planes, and we wonder how does the police, right? How does the RCMP, the same RCMP who sanctioned residential schools, right? How does the RCMP, the OPP, and Toronto Metro Police keep busting, doing these major projects where they have over 100 bricks on a table, right? Now you have to ask yourself, how did these drugs get into the country, right? We're gonna go into that in a moment, right? In the same way it was happening for the Americas is damn near the same way it's been happening in Canada, right? We're gonna talk about it in a moment.
Oh, Slocky, did you want me to keep reading?
I'm just looking at something right quick. You could read Nixon's successors.
Come. Nixon's successors, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and Bill Clinton, leveraged drug war policies in the following decades to their own political advantage, cementing the drug war's legacy.
Right. So they knew, right? And this is something you're going to find out. Any president who is Salakia, you could now we got one more thing to read out of this, right? Any president who agrees to kill, destroy Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, he gets usually a double term. As long as his counterparts can't put any crimes on him, right? He gets a double term, and he's loved by America, right? Let's read those names again, starting from Nixon.
Come. Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and Bill Clinton.
Right? These men all made policies to make sure Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Ronald Reagan, right? Starting from Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, right? This is the senior, Bill Clinton. And then you can add George Bush Jr., right? They all made policies to make sure Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans were sentenced higher and given longer prison terms, right? George, where is it? Bill Clinton, his dog, Hillary Clinton, right? She said Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, specifically Blacks, but again, Blacks mean Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans are super predators. Right? There's one more part. Salakia. Salakia, Officer Shariwan, you said something?
Allah, sir.
Okay. Read if you're a Black leader.
Come. If you're a Black leader 30 years ago, you're grabbing for the first solution in front of you, said Cassandra Frederick.
Oh, Salakia. Read the paragraph above it, Baba Kasha.
Come. But the domestic anti-drug policies were widely accepted, most because the use of illicit drugs was accompanied by an alarming spike in homicides and other violent crimes nationwide. There was even support for it in the Black community.
Keep reading, Baba Kasha.
If you're a Black leader 30 years ago, you're grabbing for the first solution in front of you, said Cassandra Frederick.
Right. Salakia, Barakia Allah, can you look for dumb dogs, right? The pastors the watchmen are dumb dogs. Can you look for that, Baba Kasha, and bring that out for me? Right. what you're finding out is these disgusting pastors, these, for lack of better words, these so-called leaders who were absolute hoes. They were hoes, right? They did anything for a handout. They were willing to side with the oppressor, right? Knowing the oppressor is dumping these drugs into our community, they decided to side with the oppressor so black men could be locked up, right? And you best believe they got money for siding with the oppressor, right? That's why whenever there's an election, you always see a couple black faces sprinkled in around a so-called politician who's being elected or running for a campaign, acting like he is Christ himself. Because in the Christian church's mind, Christ is an oppressor. Christ is the slave master. Salakia, we lost Barakia. Allah, Salakia, Officer Shaiwan, you can get rid of 1 second. Damn, I'm gonna have to drop this article in the chat, right? This article is definitely heavy, right? I'm gonna drop it in the chat. There's a lot of things you could read about this article. Hold up. Right? But we're gonna move on from this article to go on to what we have next, right? So we got to do like a quick rundown of like the Iran Contra scandal, right? So I'm going to give you a quick breakdown of the Iran Contra scandal. But Officer Shaiwan, Baba Kashar, can you get me the watchmen are dumb dogs?
Come on, sir. This is Isaiah chapter 56 and verse 10. His watchmen are blind. They are all ignorant.
Right? Our so-called leaders are blind. They were ignorant. They were stupid. They were whoring themselves in the streets to their oppressor. Right? They didn't see that the oppressor is going to destroy the community further. They didn't understand that the oppressor was the one giving out the drugs in the community. Right? Again, there are no airstrips in the Black, Hispanics, or Native American communities. How are metric tons of drugs getting into our communities? Right? Keep reading.
They are all dumb dogs. They cannot bark.
They are dumb dogs. If you have a dog that can't bark, your good is dead. You get a dog to protect yourself. He can't bark. He's not letting you know there's an intruder in your house. Now you're being stabbed in your sleep by some oppressor and your wife is being abused, right? This is what's happening to the Black, Hispanic, and Native community. Their leaders are dumb dogs, but we do have a leader right now. His name is Commanding General YAHANNA. He's going to be leading until Christ comes back, right? Hopefully Christ comes back tomorrow. Listen, man, like, Salakia, you want to get in this school right now, right? I'm praying Christ comes back tomorrow. Catch you in your sin, right? I'm praying you wake up, but listen, man, the oppressors had a long reign and too much of our people are being hurt. But you need to wake up and understand that the oppressor, he is the devil, right? He is that red dragon. He's the one that steals countries, destroys peoples, wipes out your heritage, steals your heritage, just milks you. Your oppressor is basically milking everything out of the Black, Hispanic, and Native American community. Right. It was at the last of the rest of the, was that precept finished?
Sir.
Come on, hit me with some more.
Sleeping, lying down, loving to slumber.
They're not on their job. Our leaders are not on their job at all. They are sleeping, lying down, slumbering while crack cocaine and heroin is dumped in our communities. That's what they've been doing, right? Luckily, if you're hearing this, you have leaders, right? You have leaders in Canada now that are going to get you out of oppression, that are going to teach you morally right from wrong. Read.
Verse 11.
What? That was it?
Come on, sir.
Come on, that's all we want, right? Right. So let's go. Let's break down this Iran Contra right quick, right? So in the 80s, right? Ronald Reagan took office. There was a war between the Contras and the Sandinistas, right? Salakia, I don't think I pronounced that properly, right? Sandinistas, right? This is Nicaragua. Salakia, what tribe is Nicaragua? 1 second, we got to figure that out, right? Where is Nicaragua on the map? Let's go to our trusty 12 tribe chart. Right. Guatemala. 1 second. We got to find this right quick. Guatemala to Panama would be the tribe of Zebulon, right? So the Nicaraguans are Zebulonites, right? They are the tribe of Zebulon. They dwell by the water, right? There was a civil war between the Contras and the Sandinistas. The Contras were trying to overthrow the government, right? The Sandinistas were they believed in more of a communist view, right? They were being backed by Cuba. Cuba was being backed by an oppressor, Magog, Russia, right? The oppressors in the Americas did not like that. They believed that if the Sandinistas won the war, that Russia would be in their backyard and marching into Russia, they're going to be marching into the Americas, right? You know our oppressor is afraid of his shadow. That's why he makes bunkers underground, right? That's why he makes all the weapons, right? Every single weapon you could think of, he's afraid of his shadow, right? He was afraid of Russia going into America from Nicaragua, right? They were going to march through Mexico, right? They were going to take hold of Cuba, and now they're on American soil, and now a Russian is in the office of presidency, right? But no one said anything about Donald Trump, right? So what was happening is they were afraid that Russia was going to get a foothold in the South Americas. So America, Ronald Reagan, his regime, they backed the Contras, right? Ronald Reagan was quoted for saying, the Contras are the moral equal of our founding forefathers, meaning they thought the Contras were exactly like rapists, like murderers, like slavers, right? And these are Zebulonite brothers, right? This is what happens when you envy the oppressor. You are not supposed to envy the oppressor, right? What do we got next? Salakia, Officer Chariwan, can you get me that verse? The precept for not envying your oppressors.
Okay. It's the book of Salakia. This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, and verse 31. Envy thou not the oppressor.
Right? You don't want to be like the oppressor. You don't want to be like, listen, I have to sell drugs to make my millions, right? I have to follow their government structure, right? I have to follow the government structure. I have to be a communist or a socialist, right? You don't want to envy the oppressor. You have your own law, statutes, and commandments, your own way of governing. It's in this book right here, right? Right. You get you a Holy Bible, a 1611 edition King James Version, and get with the men of the Lord. Get with the I.S.U.P.K, and you'll find a way how to govern yourself. You'll learn how you govern yourself, right? You could. It was that the last of it? Envy. You can finish out that verse.
And choose none of his ways.
And choose his ways.
Choose none of his ways.
And sell drugs.
None of his ways.
Kill your brother because he has more cocaine than you.
None of his ways.
You can't be like your oppressor, right? When you choose to be like your oppressor, your community is destroyed. Your people are destroyed, right? So what happened after, right? So at the same time, the U.S. was having bad relations with Iran. 7 U.S. hostages were kidnapped by an Iranian-backed terrorism group. Ronald Reagan went on TV. He said, I'm not going to negotiate with them. That's what Americans always say. I'm not going to negotiate with them. But there's always some backdoor deal, right? They made a backdoor deal. They allocated $30 million in weapons for Iran, right? $30 million in weapons for Iran. Iran only got $12 million in weapons, right? The other $18 million went to the Contras, right? Now, just about the same time, Congress, right, because they lost a bad war in Vietnam, they were coming off the Vietnam War. Congress, they passed the Poland Amendment, right? That was no money to the Contras, no money to any military organization that's trying to overthrow a government. They didn't want to give money to the Contras because the Contras' money was mostly coming from cocaine, from drugs, right? So they Ronald Reagan and his staff, they made this backdoor deal, right? Slovakia. Who was on his staff? I just had it. Robert McFarland, right? Robert McFarland, he facilitated the deal for the Contras, right? While facilitating that deal for the Contras, he got the Americans back. Now they took 12 million, gave it to Iran, 18 million gave it to the Contras. That money started to run dry. They weren't supposed to get any money in the first place for the Contras, right? So they needed to figure out a new way to make sure the money could be funded to the Contras, right? To fight their war, right? In 86, a Lebanese media outlet, they reported the arms deal and trials began, right? And that's how all of this came out. Oliver North, right, was he was military, right? Who else? Robert McFarland worked in the White House. 4 CIA officers, 5 government contractors. John Poindexter, the national security advisor for the White House, they were all found guilty in a trial. The trial was for Slovakia. The trial was for basically taking the funds that were supposed to go to Iran and giving them to the Contra, even though Congress passed the amendment that no money was supposed to go to the Contras, right? So now let's find out how the Contras were getting the rest of their money and who the victims of the Contras were, right? Now keep in mind that what the Contras were doing were unbrotherly because they're fighting their brothers in the country so they could take over being backed by the oppressor, right? I have one more article that we're going to go into. Slovakia. Give me one moment. I'm going to pull up that article, right? There was a brother. This brother, he's an agent, right? He's a coon. Like, when you grow up a Christian, you only care about yourself. This brother is a full-blown cooning Christian, right? An agent, right? And only because he wanted his freedom is why we even found out who and how the drugs were getting into our communities, why organizations like the Panthers were being infiltrated, and why drugs were now ravishing the community, right? Let's find it, right? That brother, his name is Freeway Rick Ross, right? Or Freeway Ricky Ross, right? Not the Miami rapper who's claiming to be some big drug dealer who was really just a watch guard CO in the tower, right? In a prison, Salakia, let me find it. Give me one moment. Got it. Right. So this brother, he decided to sell drugs. That's what he knew. If you sell drugs, you are an agent, right? You might as well go put on a Klansman uniform. Put on that hoodie and go look for the first brother and lynch him. That's you might as well. That's what you're doing. Right. Now I'm not telling you to go commit violence because violence is wrong. Don't harm your brother. But that's to let you know, like, listen, you sell what? You sell crack? All right, you're a Klansman. You're an agent for the oppressor, right? Because you now a lot of brothers they don't know what's going on. They don't know the history. That's why the men are supposed to teach, right? Parents are supposed to teach, right? Sisters are supposed to teach their children. Men are supposed to teach their children their history. Teach them and make sure they know. So they know you can't use drugs. You can't sell drugs because those drugs were put in our community to poison us, to kill us, to make sure that we would die, to make sure that we'd be docile, to make sure that our movement would no longer exist. Right? Let's get into this. 1 second. What am I looking for? All right, so 1 second. I'm going to share the screen with y'all right quick. Damn, you probably can't even see that. I'm not going to share the screen. We're just going to remove that, but I'll read it for you. Right? So this is an article, right? A CAA contra crack cocaine controversy, a review of the Justice Department's investigation and prosecutions, right? Now, this is based off the Los Angeles area, right? It's on August 1896. For the better part of a decade, a San Francisco Bay Area drug ring sold tons of cocaine to Bloods and Crips, right? These Bloods and Crips, they were organizations that were supposed to protect the neighborhood. But as our oppressor interferes, as he always does, we turn on each other and we start to fight each other, right? Salakia, let me get some more. This drug network opened the first pipeline between Colombia's cocaine cartels and the black neighborhoods of Los Angeles, right? Let's get down more. The 3-day series of articles entitled Dark Alliance, the story behind the crack explosion, right? So in the 80s, crack got on the scene. Like crack cocaine was on the scene and it destroyed our communities. Our communities are still feeling the ripple effects of crack cocaine, right? Right. So this is from the story of Ricky Donald Ross. That's Freeway Ricky Ross, right? Let's get down to where really the meat of this whole situation, right? The Dark Alliance series recounted how Ross began peddling small quantities of cocaine in the early 80s and rapidly grew into one of the largest cocaine dealers in Southern California until he was convicted of federal drug trafficking charges in March 96. The series claimed that Ross' rise to the drug world was made possible by Oscar Delano Blandon and Norrin Messies, right? Two individuals with ties to the Frueza Democratica Nicaraguanese, right? FND, one group compromising of Nicaraguan Contras, right? Blandon and Meneses reportedly sold tons of cocaine to Rick Ross, right? How are these two men able to sell tons of cocaine to one brother, right? Without anybody finding out, right? Well, that's what we're trying to investigate. That's what we're reading about. We're trying to find out, how did all these drugs get into many of our communities, who in turn converted it to crack and sold it, right? So the story now, I'm not able to confirm if this is if Freeway Ricky Ross is the original person who put crack into who cooked up cocaine into crack, but there are stories of them saying that Colombians working in the field, they would chew the cocoa leaf to get more energy, right? They would chew that leaf to get more energy, and it was like a Red Bull for them, right? Someone made cocaine, then someone decided to add something to it and turn it into a solid, from a powder to a solid. Somehow Freeway got this knowledge, and boom, crack cocaine in Toronto, New York, Los Angeles, Jamaica, wherever you could think of is crack cocaine now. Right? Again, that brother, he was an agent. He was selfish. He didn't care about anything. He only cared about his lust. He wanted to be of his father, the devil.
Right.
Right? Where was I? Right, sold it in black communities. This man decided to take his poison, right, and sell it to black communities. That was unbrotherly, right? He was not supposed to see the light of day, and now this same brother, he's on another oppressor's couch, sitting down, telling his story and getting paid to tell his story. He says that he is running around telling kids not to do these things, but I've never really seen it of him telling kids not to do these things. I've never seen him tell kids really that you shouldn't sell drugs, but he does go on an oppressor's couch, right? I'm not going to say that oppressor's name because he doesn't need no clout, right? But he's on an oppressor's couch somewhere telling his story about what he did, and when he tells these stories, he doesn't seem remorseful. He says it with a smile on his face. Right? Blandon and Meneses were said to have used their drug trafficking profits to help fund the Contra army. I'm going to read that one more time because that was a weight drop. Like if you've ever been in the gym and you heard a heavy barbell with 345 plates on each side drop, that's what that was, right? Blandon and Meneses were said to have used their drug trafficking profits to help fund the Contra army war effort, right? So these men were selling tons of drugs to Freeway, and who knows if he was the other brother, right? If there was other brothers or other people getting these drugs as well. But they sold tons to Freeway, right? And he put those drugs in our communities. He put those drugs in our homes, right? And they would take that money and give it right to the Contras to help fund a war, right? I'm going to hurry up with this article, and there's somewhere else I wanted to get to. Right. So as we said earlier, they claimed like it was no secret that the Contra groups were engaged in cocaine trafficking. That's what helped finance their war, right? They felt they were supposed to run the country of Nicaragua. So they said, we're gonna sell these drugs and we're gonna fight. We're gonna use this drug money to fight so we could take over the country. One thing you should always know: if your leader tells you to do bad, get away from him. Right? The I.S.U.P.K, we have a leader. He's never told us to do anything bad. He's never told us to break the law, right? He's never told us to break the Lord's law. So we follow that man, right? If your leader is telling you, listen, you can sell crack cocaine so we can put this food program together, you should get away from that man. That man is an evil bastard. Right? There's something else I wanted in this article. Where is it? Okay, this paragraph here. Right. However, notwithstanding the Mercury News proclamation's involvement by the CIA and the United States government in the crack crisis was implied through oblique references, right? So they were trying to act like this is not true, right? Oliver North, at his trial, he did testify that they did take the Iran money, 18 million, and give it to the Contras. The Contras, who purportedly received drug money from Blandon and Menezes, were referred to as the CIA's army, right? Links between the CIA and the leadership of the Contra movement were repeatedly emphasized throughout the articles, right? 1 second, there's something else I wanted. Slovakia, 1 moment. I'm going to find it right now. Slovakia. Okay, here it is, right? The newspaper article suggested that the United States government had protected Blandon and Menezes from prosecution and neither knowingly permitted them to peddle massive quantities of cocaine to black residents of South Central Los Angeles or turned a blind eye to such activity, right? Now, if you've watched American Gangster, Frank Lucas, right? He basically said that he was getting his cocaine, he was selling heroin. He was getting his heroin, right? His blue magic from Vietnam, right? During the Vietnam War, and the army was helping him. He had people in the army who were helping him, right? And now you best believe that they, like, higher ups, knew what was happening, right? There's not too much that you could do where the oppressor doesn't know what's happening in their own organization, right? But basically, the war on drugs, like the government sanctioned drugs into the Black, Hispanics, and Native American community, so they could fund their war. They didn't care, right? On the plus, they got to destroy Blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, and then Ronald Reagan, with his help of his wife, they decided to further the war on drugs, right? They put drugs into the Black, Hispanic, Native American community, then furthered the war on drugs by setting up laws where Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans could be taken to jail and forced into slavery, right? So first, we're going to go into some scriptures now. Can I get Exodus 22 and 18, Baba Kishab? And Officer Salakia, Trooper Baraki Allah, get me the Exodus 22 and 18. Officer Shaywan, get me Zephaniah 2 and 1.
Come.
I got the scripture.
Officer Trooper Baraki Allah, you can read the scripture you have.
Exodus 22, verse 18.
Come.
Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live.
Right. A witch is a drug dealer, right? A witch goes over a pot and a little bit of bobbity boop, 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 bop, and they're over the pot working their wrists, right? You've heard it in every rap song, work your wrists. That's what a witch was doing over a cauldron, right? Making a potion that was going to get you addicted, right? You would take that potion, right? That potion is crack cocaine in our communities, right? A witch is not supposed to live, right? These witches, they destroy our community when they only care about themselves, right? I suffer a witch not to live, right? Read.
Verse 19. Whosoever lieth with a beast shall surely be put to death.
Right, you could drop that. Officer Shariwan, read the scripture that you have, Baba Kasha.
Come. This is Zephaniah chapter 2 and verse 1. Gather yourselves together. Yea, gather together, O nation not desired.
Right. Instead of selling drugs to our people, we're supposed to gather together, right? The Contras and the Sandinistas weren't supposed to be fighting each other. They were supposed to be fighting together, right? They were supposed to be fighting the oppressor together. Instead, we have brothers and sisters who want to fight each other over a house that where they can make a few $1,000s selling crack cocaine, selling fentanyl, right? They want to fight over drug blocks. Salakia, right? We know that the earth is given into the hands of the wicked, right? That's what we know. They're going to keep selling drugs to us. They're going to keep flooding our communities with drugs, right? Trooper Baraka Allah, get me Psalms 141 verses 9, Baba Kasha.
So like it said, Psalms 141 verse 9.
Khan.
Khan. This is Book of Psalms, chapter 141, verse 9. Keep me from the snare which they have laid for me, and the grins of the workers of iniquity.
Salakia, one moment. I'm just trying to catch up with you. Right. You can read that again.
Psalms 141 verse 9. Keep me from the snare which they have laid for me, and the grins of the workers of iniquity.
Right. You want to like the oppressor has set traps, right? He's literally set traps for you. His war on drugs is a trap for you, right? Now what do blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans call the house they sell cocaine in? Call the house they sell drugs out of? They call it the trap house, right? He set traps and snares for you, right? You don't wanna go into those, right? You wanna stay clear from those traps, right? Those traps are gonna catch you. And you're gonna be doing lifelong sentences because you wanted to go through the trap. Was that the last of the verse?
Of the verse Khan.
Right. Get me da 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 da. 1 second. Where were we? Verse 9. Read verse 10, Baba Kashar.
Psalms 141 verse 10. Let the wicked fall into their own nets, while it's that withal escape.
Right. Let the wicked fall into their own nets, right? Now the wicked, now heroin is in the suburbs, right? Now you can't walk into any small city where that's predominantly Caucasian without seeing some oppressor addicted to a needle and what comes out the needle, right? You could drop that. Da, 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 da. Officer Shah, you want get me the man of sin is revealed.
Come, sir.
sur ISUPK Québec, encore une fois.
Whenever you got it, you could drop it. Right? We're finding out like the oppressor. He's done a lot of crimes to us. He's made us. He's turned us into his agents of destruction. Right? Slovakia. Right, the oppressor has destroyed us. He's destroyed us, and now we're finding out. Right, we've been finding out his crimes. We've been finding out all his crimes against us. Right, and you're starting to see that the oppressor is the devil the Bible speaks of, and you can't get away from it. Whenever you got that precept, you can read it.
Con. This is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition.
Right. The son of perdition, the man of sin is being revealed. We're finding out. If you haven't found out, you're finding out now that there's crack cocaine in your community because of the oppressor, because of the European man, because he wanted to destroy you, and because he's afraid of everything. He was afraid of Russia having allies with Nicaragua and Cuba, so he had to put crack cocaine in your community, heroin in your community, so they could stop a Cold War. Right? No shots were fired in this war. That's why it's called a Cold War. But he was so afraid that there's going to be rockets launching from South America into the Americas. Right. Baba Kasha, can you get me Isaiah 47 and 9?
Come. This is Isaiah chapter 47 and verse 9. But these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day: the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon thee in their perfection.
Right. How many brothers and sisters have lost children because of the drug trade? So many mothers are crying right now because their children are serving life sentences over one brick of powder, over one brick of a chopped up plant with gasoline and cement in it. Right? Over 1 kilo of nothing. You've lost your son and your child was taken away. Your his life was taken because he had 9 ounces of cocaine in a house somewhere, and what he had 9 ounces and 5 grand. His life was taken. Right? Your daughter, she was somewhere ODing in a corner of heroin. Right? And that many people's lives, our people, our Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, we've lost many brothers and sisters to the drug epidemic. Slovakia. Give me one moment. Right. You can keep reading. Was that the end of the verse?
Allah, sir.
Khan.
They shall come upon thee in their perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thine enchantments.
Right. The sorceries is the drug dealing, right? That drug dealing is like an enchantment to the person using it. It's like a spell. It damn near is a spell to the person who's using it, and it makes them turn into a person they're not supposed to be, right? You're not supposed to be stealing your child's Xbox and selling it. You're not supposed to be selling everything in the house and living like a monster, living like you have no. You're a zombie. Like if you've ever seen a person on heavy drugs, they turn into a zombie. You can see oppressors. You can see blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans walking down the street. They're looking at the road, right? Now, when you see an oppressor walking down the street just looking at the road, and you know that person is not clean, you know that person is a drug addict, right? They're looking for a rock. Then you would think that they're looking for change. You would think they're hoping that they can see a loony to come across to put it together with some more change that they've been panhandling all day for. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for, and they're hoping some drug dealer dropped a piece of crack cocaine on the in the road. That's what they're looking for, right? Salakia. What else do we got? Salakia. Officer Shari 1, get me 1 second. Get me Matthew 25 and 40.
Come. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 25 and verse 40. And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me.
Right. Read that one more time, Baba Kasha.
And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me.
Right. So we're supposed to live like listen, if you're selling like crack cocaine to that brother or sister down the street, it's like you sold it to my mother, you sold it to my father, right? That's how we're gonna get rid of the drug dealing in our community. The drug dealing that plagues our community and has taken the lives of so many of our brothers and sisters, right? Again, so many brothers and sisters are sitting in Guantanamo South because they thought that selling an ounce of what do they call it nowadays? Selling an ounce of dog food was the which is fentanyl. They thought that was the way. That was gonna pay their rent. That was gonna feed their children, right? Now they're facing 5-10 years in jail on their third felony, on their first felony, right? On their first felony, they're facing 5 years. On their third felony, man, you're not seeing that brother for a decade. Right? Read that one more time, Baba Kasha.
And the king shall answer and say unto them, Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, ye have done it unto me.
Right. You're not supposed to sell your brother uh crack cocaine. You're not supposed to sell him drugs. When you sell him drugs, it's like you've sold it to everybody in the community. You're destroying the community, right? If you sold that brother drugs, it's like you sold it to me. It's like you sold it to that person's mom. It's like you sold it to my mother, right? And that's how once you envision that type of brotherhood towards your people, crime is gonna stop, right? This is the brotherhood we need for our people. Once you do that, crime is going to stop. Like no one's going to be on drugs anymore because you're going to realize, like, listen, now you know what? There are some evil. Now I can't even say evil. Just some brothers who don't give a damn. They truly envy the oppressor and want to live like the oppressor. They'll sell their own mother drugs, right? There's rappers who's rapped about it, right? The oppressor owns record label companies, right? Notices he doesn't put out music with other oppressors saying it's okay to sell dope. It's okay to murder each other. But for the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, that's to wow. That's a platinum record, right? DMX had records about stealing. Now DMX, that brother, he passed. He was a poet. They said he OD'd. I'm not quite sure, so I'm not gonna say he OD'd or not, right? But they're saying he OD'd off drugs. He was a Christian. He had Bible verses tattooed on him, right? He wasn't supposed to have any tattoos. He went through trauma and he did a lot of drugs. He rapped about using drugs and selling drugs and robbing his own brothers and sisters for drugs. Now, look what happened. He died, and they're saying that he might have died from an OD. He might have died from someone from having too much drugs. Right? So Salakia, Officer Shaywan, if there's anything you want to add, we're about to wrap up in a few moments. If there's anything you want to add, feel free.
Allah, sir.
Khan. Right. So the long story short is like there is a long history of drugs in our community. We're not supposed to be drug dealers. That's not where we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be rulers of the earth. How are you gonna rule the earth but sell drugs to your people? Right? You can't you're not able to lead anybody if you think that selling dope is the way to start a business. Ask every brother who sold drugs, right? What business they started from selling dope. Ask them if they even got to that point of, yeah, you were able to open a business right off that drug money. You went up north and you sold the children of Gad all the fentanyl you had in your pocket, and you thought you were going to start a business. And then you got raided, and now you're in Beaver Creek, right? Now you're in Beaver Creek, a federal facility. Now you're in Workworth. Now you're in Joyceville, right? Because you wanted to go sell the children of Gad drugs. You wanted to be the agent of the oppressor. Right? Salakia. Right. So with that said, this has been another history class, Monday night history class. We're back at it again. We'll be back at it again next Monday for history. Tomorrow, Officer Shaywan, you could drop your class, the details for your class.
Con, sir, for water, sir. Every Tuesday night Brotherhood class. Tuesday night Brotherhood class is going on from 5 till 7 o'clock on No Cowards Canada webpage, No Cowards Canada YouTube and Facebook. Make sure you like, share, subscribe this video. Make sure you tune in tomorrow.
Right. And with that said, I'm going to hand the class over to Officer Shaywan. Right. Don't forget to hit that sign in. Salakia. I forgot to let everyone know. Right. Shameless plug. Commanding General Yahanna is live right now on Commanding General Yahanna on YouTube. Right. You can also catch the Black Watch on blackwatch.news. That's the new website, blackwatch.news. Right. And also a new channel alert on YouTube. Right. Black Watch. One word. That's one word. Black Watch space news. Right. Black Watch space news on YouTube right now. We got that's the only channel, right, that's gonna bring you the stories of Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Right, your local news channel is not doing it, but this news channel here, Black Watch space news, again, Black Watch that's one word space news, Black Watch news. That's the channel where you're gonna get the stories of Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Right now, I believe the title that I seen is about a brother from, I think he was in the New Jersey area, and they said he was lynched. But you know, our oppressors, they're gonna try and make it look like he hanged himself with his hands tied behind his back. Right? Again, I'm gonna pass the class over to Officer Shaywan. Shalom.
Let's clap it up for Officer Zabadia. These are the I.S.U.P.K security announcements. We are the I.S.U.P.K, started at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York. Rule for new brother and sister. When a new brother or sister comes into the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They are to be saluted only. They are here to shed themselves of the world. They need transportation, the teacher will arrange it. After this 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, he or she must get permission from the head to speak to a brother or sister. There is another 6 months in which the brother and sister will court each other. After this 6-month period, the brother and sister will get permission from the head to marry. Tithes, which is a commandment. Numbers 18, verse 21, and Malachi chapter 3, verses 8 to verse 10. Ma'ashra means tenth in the Hebrew. 10% of every penny of any increase the Lord gives you, give to the treasury department or teacher. Priest fund, free will offering for priests, not mandatory. Whatsoever amount you would like. Upcoming holy convocations. On September, Monday the 6th, we have the memorial of blowing of trumpets. With that said, we're going to give a courtesy salute to the brothers and a courtesy salute to the sisters. Men of Israel, I.M.A.J.M, which means stand. We're going to give a courtesy salute to the brothers. Men of Israel, I.M.A.J.M Shabbat. I.M.A.J.M, Barak. Yahba Shem Yahshai Barakatam. Yad Yamatah. We're going to give a courtesy salute to the sisters. Men of Israel, I.M.A.J.M Shabbat. I.M.A.J.M, Barak. Yahweh Shamar Al-Quran Hashem Yahshai. Yad Yamatah. Class dismissed.
Hold up, I'm dropping the rest of those sign out links. Don't forget to hit that sign out link if you're looking for Hebrew benefits, if you're looking for a name and you want to get in the school.